Welcome to a Management Plus training webinar. My name is Kevin Sloan. I'm a certified electronic health record specialist and certified ophthalmic technician. Management Plus is an industry leader in EHR, and we want to provide you with the documentation tools and the skills to use these tools proficiently. Today's training webinar is titled Charge Slip. Let's get started. Once again, we have Bob on the screen. And we have access to charge slip by clicking the charge slip title on the form tree in the left. There are several different methods in using this charge slip. Let's review all of these. The end result is to get your codes, your CPT codes, into the charge grid, which is this large grid in the upper right hand section of this. We have some insurance information. You can see Bob doesn't have any insurances or any balances. In your system, most of your patients will have some balances and some coverages detailed out in these controls here. On the left-hand side, you can see we have exam charges, the modifiers, so you can put up to 4 modifiers on there. This is the I code suggested coding module, and then the E&M suggested coding modules. Let's take a look at the I codes. By default, it will default to new patient exam. The E&M code will default to established. If it's not what you want, you will need to select that, established. Based on the documentation that was done during the exam, it will suggest a code. You may want to have a higher level for billing, or you can use this level here. You can change it in several places. If I am happy with this, or if I say, gee, I want to change this to a different code, but I want to at least start with that, clicking this button will add that code to the charge grid. If you want, you can have your facility set up so that it will populate into that. Your EHR specialist will do that for you upon request. If you want to change this code, you can click into that and change to any code of your choice. It's entirely up to you. If you ever want to clear this grid out, there's this little small button right here that you can click and it will clear that out. If I would have put in a modifier, it would have added that modifier to those lines. For the E&M code, it will default to established. If you want a new patient or consult patient exam, you'll need to select one of those. It will default to 99211. So if you select these options here, it will give you a suggested code. Based on what was done during the exam and in combination with your choices here, the output will be reflected. Your counters are below, your thresholds are to the right. If you had an HPI of 1, you would never get a 99213 or 14 or 15. It would just never do it. Or if your exam is only 1 or 2. So all of these in combination with that will drive it. If I change limited to multiple on the diagnosis, it did nothing for the suggested code. If I change this to moderate, you can see that it did. So there are several different combinations that you can come up with that drives this code. If I want to add that to the grid, clicking this button will add that to the grid. Again, if I had had a modifier in here, it would have added that. I can come back up here and add a modifier later on at any given time. You can see that it does put in the master diagnoses. I have one here, and the second one, the third one is blank, and the fourth one has one. So that's why you see it exactly as it is. For all tests and procedure charges, there's a script button here that, when clicked, will add all of those if properly documented. Your EHR specialist will review with you all the triggers associated with that. So here you can see that we've documented an OCT, and this is for a YAG capsulotomy. it has added it to the charge grid. You can decide if you want the exam code first or the test codes first, just your selection on which button. So if you want the exam code, the E&M code first, and then the test, you can click those buttons and add those very quickly. We have yet another option here, is to manually click into this by clicking the plus button, and then you can manually add a line within that grid and put in as much or as little as you need to. Yet another option is to use the tools in the lower right hand section. Clicking the plus buttons, which are essentially script buttons, will fill the code list with a specific set of codes. Naturally, all of this can be modified upon request. Your EHR specialist can do that for you so that you have no more and no less of what you need. To add options to the charge grid, if I want this code here, I will just click that, highlight it, add any modifiers that I need, and then click the plus button and it will add that to the list. Very easy to do. New patient codes, special tests, lasers, diagnostic testing, contact lens, emergency services, here's for workman's comp, and then PQRS. These can be set up to have as many or as few as you need. Clicking this switch will allow the additional CPT code to be visible. You can add in your code, click the button, it will add it to the grid. If you want to do a no charge, you can put in your reason, click the button, and it will add a line with no charge onto that. So let's add our exam code and the test codes here. It does not take very long to add these to the grid. I do recommend that when your billers are using the charge slip, that they access the patient from your schedule. And I would do this the day after the patient was seen. So if Bob was seen on the 11th, on the 12th, on the morning of that, I would go to my schedule, start at the top, I would right click and do current EHR visit. It would bring up this visit, and then I would perform a 20-second chart audit by reviewing the narrative, the runtime narrative. So I have accessed it here. And what you'll want to do is take a look at the description. I don't have one here, but it would be at the top. Generally with the description, say it was something like, routine complete exam. When you view this, let's let it rebuild. You can see that it says routine complete exam at the top. You'll probably know if the patient is established or new on what code you're going to charge for. Most of the time you're going to charge the same code for all of your routine complete exams. There will be some exceptions, but for the majority you will have already had in mind what code you're going to charge for the exam. So you'll want to do a 20-second chart audit by clicking once into this and using your space bar, the page down, and kind of review to make sure that all of this information was documented. So you can see that the exam was done, anterior and posterior segment. Here's a notation for the OCT as well. Here's the assessment, and then here's the laser that was documented. You'll probably have a little more information than this. I just documented the bare minimum. So now we can tell that we're probably going to build a 99214, and we're going to be posting charges for an OCT and for a YAG laser. We'll navigate right to the charge slip. Depending on the preferences of your physicians, scribes, and your billers, you may have the physicians or the scribe add codes to the charge grid, or you may not. You may leave this up to the biller to do all of that. In this case, we have the codes here since I just added those. Now I want to post those. If you were to come to this point here and see an order for a test, but you did not see any documentation on the narrative, You'll want to do a little further investigation to find out, okay, was the test really done? Was it ordered and not completed? Or was it completed and the documentation for the order was not there? Or you may see the documentation that the test was done, but there's no interpretation. So you'll want to essentially, perform a chart audit to make sure that all of the appropriate documentation is on the record. So you'll have an order, you'll have indication that the test was done, and an interpretation for that. If attachments were attached to the record, say they did an OCT and they have an interface set up or are manually attaching image files, you'll see a number here if they've assigned it the attachment type of OCT. It doesn't hurt to go to attachments and take a look. They may have image files here or other files, but may not have assigned it the appropriate attachment type. So you would not see a number next to this. So you're essentially finishing up your audit by just confirming that the test actually was done and completed, and everything that the tech, scribe, and physician were supposed to do has been completed. Once you get to that point, you will know if these codes are correct and if there's others that need to be added on but may need further documentation. A good way to manage this is to set a status. Needs further documentation. You could have statuses that are a little more specific as to what needs to be done, like needs test results imported, needs interpretation of special tests, or so forth. Whatever your office prefers, you can have as many statuses as you need to be as specific as you feel is necessary. Sometimes you may not be able to post charges. You may need different diagnosis codes. You'll have to send a task to the physician to set the right code in the diagnosis so that you can bill. In this case, for the sake of this training, we're just going to say that these codes are correct and we are happy with all of this and we want to post it. There are several methods to posting charges. You can post from inside of EHR, you can post from financials, or you can post from the charge work list. Let's right click, choose charge grid. If I were to post from inside of EHR, I would choose post. This is how 98% of our clients do. They post it from the open EHR so that you can actually have the status within the grid set to posted when it's done. You will also be able to do your 20-second chart audit and assess your attachments to make sure all of the documentation is correct, to have your checks and balances. You may have had documentation that a test was ordered but it was never done, and then also the test may be done but never documented that it was ordered, interpreted, and so forth. So it's most of our clients do it through the open EHR so that they can have access to that runtime narrative and to the record to confirm that their record is fully documented when it comes to the tests and procedures that need to be done. So you'll right click on the charge grid and choose charge grid and then post, and your charge entry will be on the screen. If you wanted to change your code at this point, you could. If you've been using Management Plus for any length of time, your billers will be very familiar with this screen so that they can add values to this or subtract. They can edit and do whatever they need to from this screen here. Posting to the patient's financials is covered under the Management Plus practice management portion. So I'll not go into this in detail, otherwise it would be redundant. But essentially, once you have your codes in there, you'll just click post. If you have billing rules, they will fire at the same time, just as if you were in the financials, and so forth. So if I decide not to post this, and I hit close, I can move over to no. Here I'm missing a piece of information, so the posted button is not lit up. There's something missing, more than likely a facility. Let's take a look here. Let's choose main office. Okay, it's not that. Let's choose referring physician. Let's choose this one here. It's not that either. Let's try place of service and then type of service. Okay, and then let's choose location. Okay, so I'm still missing some important information that is not allowing this posted button to be viewable here. And I can see that it's actually this code. This code does not exist within my database because there's no description. If I back it off and put a different number, you can see that we have that, and now it will be lit up. This is actually an old code. My database does not have the most up-to-date billing code for a 99 or a 92134, which would be for macular scan. Let's just say this was really the code I wanted. You can click post, and if I skip the diagnosis codes, so you can see that I do not have that in there, and it says I don't want to have any blanks. Let's just switch this around here. Try this again. Alright, so that's good. Now once I've gone through all of these, it will just bring up the next one. And let's try this again here. Okay, and I do have an error because I don't have a valid claim on this. So we'll close this out. It's going to ask me if I want to save the record. I'll click yes. Okay, and you can see that one of these were successfully posted. The other two were not. So you may need to go back to this, set your status so that you'll know which record you need to go back to. Otherwise, this ends up to be a 60-second chart audit and posting session for each patient. You could, on a lot of patients, get this down to 30 seconds or less to quickly review the narrative, add the charges to the grid. If they're already there, you can quickly go in there and post those. If your billing rules are set up so that it adds all of those elements within the posting screen, you can quickly post these. And I've seen it done before where it's a 30-second process for each patient. And it becomes very accurate, very easy for your billers to manage posting charges within EHR. Okay. All right. If these charges were sent to the charge work list, you would access those from the main screen of Management Plus. You'd click File. And I'm not able to do that. My computer's not very happy right now, but essentially it's File, EHR, and then Charge Work List. You can access that. Also from Financials, you can actually go into Financials and import those charges. But again, very few offices do it that way since they're not able to do a chart audit if they're posting it from either Financials or from the charge work list. This completes the training on the charge slip. Thank you very much for your attention.